Yep.
Can you guys see it?
Okay.
Okay, can we start? Hello, my name is Sangeeta and my teammates are Pravani and Rachel. We're from the Academy of Health and Medical Sciences.
Our sustainable development goal is sustainable cities and communities.
We're so excited to share our project with you.
SDG number 11 is sustainable cities and communities. So what does this mean? The definition states a city designed with consideration for social, economic, environmental impact, and resilient habitat for the existing population. This allows future generations to experience the same, if not better, quality of life.
So why are sustainable cities so important? Statistics from a UN study projects that in 2050, 68% of people worldwide will be living in cities. With this rapid growth, it's vital that our cities optimize job opportunities and living conditions for inhabitants while still reducing any negative impacts it may have on the environment.
Sustainable cities are vital to providing a better life for future generations. They also have many benefits to the people living in them, such as reduced poverty and new jobs. Additionally, it promotes affordable housing and social interaction. Currently, we are running out of natural resources faster than we can replenish them, and it is predicted in the next 60 years we will run out. Converting to a more sustainable lifestyle is the only way to save our ecosystem before it's too late.
We created a 3D model of a sustainable city to express our ideas. We started from scratch and created every single detail. We included housing, open spaces, and green spaces. In the coming slides, you will see individual aspects of our city. We will be posting a link of our model on Twitter after this presentation, so whenever you get a chance, please check it out.
One aspect of our sustainable city is its greenery. We prioritized adding as many plants and vegetation as possible. They support the city by photosynthesizing and providing the environment with fresh, clean air. Also, many plants act as purifiers by removing harmful pollutants from the air. Some examples of air purifying plants are peace lilies, lady palms, and parlor plums. As you can see, our building is surrounded by many plants, which provide both decoration and increase the sustainability of the city. Here are some models of homes we created. As you can see, we added hanging pot plants, which, without taking much space, increases the amount of vegetation of the city. Furthermore, we also added rooftop gardens. These plants help retain rainwater, lowering the possibility of water runoff and potential local flooding within the city. It also serves as natural filters for the rain and moderates the temperature of the buildings by absorbing solar radiation that could heat up many materials such as concrete and asphalt.
We implemented greenhouses into our city to allow the citizens to grow their own food. This makes the city less reliant on others, therefore making it more sustainable. Greenhouses offer tons of benefits such as portability, pest prevention, and longer growing seasons. Greenhouses also require little space and don't compromise social quality. Since the plants are protected, they can be grown year-round. Any extra food scraps can then be composted and returned back to the plants to help them grow.
Another aspect of a sustainable city is the use of sustainable transportation. We want to highlight the use of public transportation, biking, walking, skateboarding instead of using cars. Any other form of transportation other than cars lowers the amount of air pollution in cities and overall helps it become more sustainable.
Here's an inside view of one of our houses. As you can see, there's lots of plants around the house. An important feature of the houses is that they're relatively small. This is because small houses consume less energy and are easier to power with renewable energy. Also, small houses are easier to insulate and use fewer building materials. They are easier to heat and cool and leave less room for unnecessary electronics. We also implemented lots of apartments into our city for the same reasons.
We have also added parks to our sustainable city. The vegetation and space in parks allow for local ecosystems to survive, providing food and living space for animals such as birds and squirrels. Like mentioned previously, the parks will act as air purifiers, absorbing pollutants such as sulfur dioxide, ammonia, and others while releasing oxygen into the air. Also, the plants would purify nearby lakes or rivers, giving cleaner bodies of water. Within some sections of the park, we have added accommodations such as pools, playgrounds, and paths. This would encourage city residents to go outdoors and perform recreational activities in the park. It would also increase the quality of the community by giving them the opportunities to meet with one another outside of work or school, and it would also raise their health by ensuring they exercise.
Some other aspects of our model city are sidewalks for walking, open spaces to promote outdoor activities, and narrow roads to slow traffic and reduce CO2 emissions. As you can see, the apartments and houses also have lots of windows so people can use sunlight rather than light bulbs. Lastly, we included photovoltaic streetlights, which rely on the sun rather than fossil fuels. Overall, there are tons of different ways to make a city more sustainable, and we encourage you to research what you can do to make a change.
Here's some things you can do to help your city or town be more sustainable. You can use less energy by turning off lights when you leave a room, unplugging devices that are fully charged, recycling items when possible, thrifting clothing, using reusable cloths instead of disposable paper napkins, using reusable bags when going grocery shopping, growing your own food, composting food scraps, using public transportation or carpooling whenever possible, reducing the amount of water used when taking showers, and more. One example of an application that my family uses is composting food. Instead of throwing away food scraps after meals, we sprinkle the compost over the plants in our backyard.
Also, my family makes sure to always use reusable utensils, dishes, and plates. We try to avoid using discardable appliances to avoid unnecessary trash. We also make sure to separate our recyclables from the trash bin.
Personally, my family maintains a garden during the summer where we grow vegetables to use in our cooking. It is a great way to get some vitamin D and be more sustainable. My neighbors also give us some of their garden produce in return for us giving some of ours. We have compiled a list of several nonprofits that specialize in sustainable cities. You can reach out to these organizations to get involved yourself.
Thank you so much for attending our presentation.
We hope we inspired you to implement some sustainable practices into your daily life.
You can check out our sustainable city model at the link below or go to my Twitter at Singitapuno. Next up is SDG number 6, clean water and sanitation.
Can you guys see my presentation?
Yep.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Today we'll be presenting Sustainable Development Goal number 6, Hydrodynamics, the town. I'm joined by Bhavya and Haley, and together we will bring our idea to fruition of a town run solely around the objective of conserving water. So first off, I want to point out our inspiration. So there's this country in the Atlantic Ocean called Bermuda. Very small country. For reference, this is Bermuda to the rest of the world. It takes only 1 hour to drive from one end of the island to the other end. This means that there's no space for water processing plants. Even though they're surrounded by water, it's salt water, so they can't use it, which means they have to rely on other methods for fresh water. I want to introduce you to Bermuda step crews. They are very white, as you can tell, in steps. So when it rains, they can collect rainwater for drinking, cooking, bathing, any freshwater use. Next up, I want to introduce you guys to the rest of our concept. As you can see, the notorious Bermuda step crews are there, but we also included an aquatic underwater walkway, which would act as our tourist attraction and our source of revenue. And we also have the Hanging Gardens of Babylon as a decoration. With that, I introduce you to our world. I hand the microphone off to Bhavya.
Today, we will be presenting our 3D world that conceptualizes our SDG number 6, clean water and sanitation. Our first destination in our walkthrough is the temple/Parthenon, dedicated to the Greek gods of Poseidon and Athena. It is decorated with a multitude of different lanterns and fire pits. Inside, we could see 3 artifacts placed in significance of these 2 Greek gods.
As we come along here, you can take detail to notice that we have decorated our pathways with streams of water, which not only work as a rain collector, but also as a source of water and energy. Coming up here, we have the library, which works as a way for the townspeople to gain knowledge, but also in here to upgrade their tools and weapons, and upstairs serves as a storage facility as well as a place to gather materials from another world. The roof serves as a rain collector and will be shown later in the presentation.
As we come to the residential area, we could see the houses with 2 floors. As we go inside, we could see the house is decorated with paintings, lanterns, and here is our water collection facility. Here, rainwater from the roofs drop down here, and it can be used for clean, drinkable water for the residents. Up here, we have the bedroom decorated with more paintings and lanterns. These lanterns are powered by solar energy and are used and are sustainable. And here is our rain collection facility from our roofs. Here we come to our garden. These flowers are used for decoration, and the dyes from these flowers can be used for clothing and other objects. Here we have our chests, which display our storage facilities for our garden and our tools.
As you can see here, the water collects up and travels down, which also gathers energy. This energy is then used to power the doors, as can be seen here. They're automatic and open up just like so. Coming up along here, we can see that there's huge trees that are actually self-sustained. The water from the pathways, as well as rain, work to grow them. No additional water is required from the villagers. A similar process has been used for our agriculture system, where there's 4 plants of wheat, melons, pumpkins, and beetroot. Each row of plants has their own source of water, so there's ample amount of resources for them to grow. Half of the agriculture system has been completely uncovered, and the other half is completely covered by glass. And a pathway leads to the farm, which is populated by many different animals such as pigs, sheep, chickens, alpacas, llamas, cows, horses, and donkeys. Traveling around here, this farm is also self-sustained because the animals can be fed, which then allow them to produce offspring. The chickens also lay eggs, and those eggs can be used as ingredients for other foods and also can be used to spawn other chickens. The lake here, completely naturally made, has salmon swimming inside of it, which is used as food. For population control, there are 2 wolves inside the farm, which work to kill animals when there's too many. This entire farm is also naturally made, and the only edits that have been done is an addition of a fence to protect the animals.
As we come along here, we could see the water from the pathways are gathered in this building, the water treatment facility. This treatment facility cleans toxic waste out of the water and makes it drinkable for our villagers and water for our garden.
As Bhavya said, there's water processing facilities right here. There's larger ones that clean out bigger metals such as chromium and arsenic, and smaller ones that clean out smaller bacteria such as E. coli. The water travels along this entire facility and essentially becomes completely clean to be drunk by the villagers. Coming up this hill, we have an alchemy and medicinal facility. It is used to make medicine and other potions. Inside, there are different materials that the alchemists will need, such as brewing stations, basins, water collecting stations where the water travels around the entire building. Chests have been placed with materials that the alchemists themselves have gathered, and it's used to enhance and help heal the villagers in our town. A small detail that might be noticed is that this is the only building that has 2 black roses, which have been completely designed by the alchemists and their materials.
As we come along here, you can see a quick overview of our village with our library to the right and our Parthenon directly in front of us. Here we come up to our aquarium, which is our only source of income for our village.
Inside, we can see that there's many different animals that are swimming around, and none of them have been put in danger or placed here specially for this aquarium. They come and go as they please, and they're not tagged, so we cannot track them.
As we come along here, we go past our Parthenon / temple, and we come to this harbor. This harbor has been decorated with, not decorated, but this harbor has boats for the villagers to use to travel outside the village and trade and gather more materials.
As can be seen in this project, our idea involves a game, and might be considered a waste of time for most, but one thing that I and my group mates have learned is that this game has revolutionized one aspect of our thinking. It allows us to recreate and conceptualize our ideas and theories, making them a sort of reality for all of us. Essentially, it lets us believe that at some point or the other, we can change the world, even if it's just a little bit. Thank you for your time. We now hand the microphone off to Anjali's group, SDG 13.
Hi, I'm Astrida.
I'm Alyssa. I'm Anjali.
And I'm Zachary.
And we are juniors at the Somerset County Vocational and Technical High School. After recognizing the adverse effects of climate change, it is clear that international cooperation is necessary for combating the peril it has brought us and to build resilience to help communities all over the world. SDG 13, Climate Action, is geared towards preventing future implications of climate change and addressing the harm that has already been done. Our group is working towards spreading awareness and educating our community about the hazards that climate change has caused, as well as sharing what still needs to be done. The World Meteorological Organization has confirmed that 2020 was the hottest year on record, tying 2016. Carbon emissions have significantly increased since the 1880s, ultimately resulting in an increase of Earth's average temperature by 2 degrees Fahrenheit. The energy sector accounts for about 3/4 of carbon emissions. This includes electricity, heat, and transport. What do you think is the most pressing matter at the moment pertaining to climate change?
All right. Out of the many implications caused by climate change, today we're going to focus on these 3: carbon emissions, the effect of climate change on developing nations, and natural disasters. So let's talk about carbon emissions. Carbon dioxide is the most abundant greenhouse gas, and the reason that we find so much of it in our air is because of the burning and production of non-renewable resources like coal, natural gas, and oil. And think about how much we use these substances daily. It's a lot. So I've been throwing around this term greenhouse gas a lot. So what does it mean? Well, greenhouse gases are gases that trap and emit heat. And as we consume more of these non-renewable resources, we start to notice this trend of temperature imbalances. So what does this do? Why is this problematic? Well, it creates more opportunities for natural disasters to occur. For example, recently in America, Texas received a great amount of snow.
And this happened in a developed nation, and they were still unable to properly handle the situation with such a dramatic change in the weather. So if we put this in the context of developing nations who lack the infrastructure, who lack the important resources it takes to adapt to these drastic changes in temperature and climate, they're going to have a harder time adjusting to those scenarios. And according to the World Health Organization, as of year 2030, so 10 years from now, climate change is expected to contribute to approximately 250,000 additional deaths per year from malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat stress. Another problem that arises because of climate change in developing nations happens to be that climate change actually affects populations disproportionately. So women and girls are likely to experience the negative impacts of climate change compared to their male counterparts. This is because there's gender inequalities and development gaps that what that does is, because developing countries have such a dependence on natural resources that women and young girls have a harder time accessing, it becomes harder for them to get help from aid, and therefore just makes it harder for them especially to adjust to these changes. So let's discuss what we can do to solve these issues.
So as you can see, these are some factories in China, and many people want companies to lower their emissions, but if we continue to consume as much as we do, then production increases. If we all stay mindful and aware of our purchases and consume less, we could help lower emissions. So what has been done and what can we do to mitigate this issue?
So far, there has not been enough done, but there are still many strides being made against climate change. The three that we are going to focus on are the Paris Agreement, what China has done, and the difference between what developed and developing nations can do. One of the most major policy changes that have taken place in the past few years has been the Paris Agreement. This agreement was signed on April 22, 2016 by 195 countries. The key points from this agreement include keeping the global temperature increase below 2.5 degrees Celsius, allowing global emissions to peak as soon as possible and then quickly bringing them down, and limiting the increase of global temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius. China at one point had been the greatest producer of carbon emissions globally. However, now they have implemented policies to steer their industries away from coal, which has contributed a lot to greenhouse gases, and toward natural gas and electricity. Their carbon emissions are not going down at a fast enough rate. However, it is still better that they are taking these steps. Adding on to Anjali's point, the economic inequality between developed and developing nations has increased by 25% from 1970. Developing countries are the ones most affected by climate change, but they do not have the means to help themselves. They lack the infrastructure and resources to combat climate change. In addition to this, they are not even the ones contributing the most. Developed nations, such as the United States and China, are the major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. They need to quickly implement policies to discourage the use of greenhouse gases in order to not only help themselves, but also the rest of the world.
So as you can see here, carbon dioxide is the most prominent greenhouse gas, accounting for 81% of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. So this chart here ties back to consuming less. China is the main exporter of everyday products, hence their carbon dioxide emissions being the highest. The worst part, as mentioned before, is that developing countries have to deal with these consequences.
Even if steps are being taken toward a more green Earth, there are still things that we can all do. The first thing that can be done is to communicate with our local governments and vouch for eco-friendly bills. Our combined efforts will definitely be able to make an impact in preventing climate change. Another way to help is to advocate for carbon emission reduction and to educate others about the effects of carbon emissions. We need to show how much carbon emissions are affecting the climate change and what we should do about it. This knowledge needs to be more widespread in order to truly make a change. Lastly, each of us needs to be cautious and mindful of our own carbon footprint by carefully observing what we do each day. Keeping track of our energy consumption and amount of waste produced is a good starting point, and together we will be able to reduce carbon emissions around the world. Thank you for listening into our presentation, and please be sure to join for the next session with Mr. Nober's SDG number 12, at Nober Tech Class and by following the hashtag Goals Project hashtag.
Chicos, ¿me oyen? ¿Sí?
Sí.
Ok. Un momento, por favor. Chicos, ¿me oyen? Bueno, let me finish with YouTube. Un momento, por favor. Yeah. Let me go out. I'm going to close the session and come back in.